I mean, you touched upon that, and this is for all three of you, because change, organizations, FIFA, do you think, Troy is laughing, do you think they actually do enough to tackle those problems? And if so, what do they do? And if not, what do you expect them to do? And it's for whoever wants to take the lead on this one.
The proof is there, isn't it? They are an organisation that has the power to make the change that I believe that we'd all like to see. They are the organisation that sets the rules. They are the organisation that, whenever there is... so let me give you an example. When England were racially abused out in Bulgaria a few years ago in the European Championships, the Bulgarians were already on a ban. They were already on, so there was a partial stadium closure. But what happens is the ultras who are prominent behind the abuse then go and land themselves in another part of the stadium. So you're only closing the stadium superficially so it looks good on the TV. But what you're not doing is you're not stopping those people who are administering the abuse from being active. So when England, Tyrone Mings especially it was, that highlighted the fact that there was racial abuse coming, there's a 3-step protocol that is in place to enable, protect apparently players, and also the England contingent. Well, that 3-step protocol, which eventually should lead to a game being abandoned, stopped at 2 steps because they don't really want the game. So imagine the product on the field of play, cameras everywhere, and there's no one on the pitch. But they stopped, even though the abuse continued, and that abuse was recognised by the authorities. The top guy at England at the time, who was Greg Clark, the FA chair, who said, but it wasn't as much as the first half. So how much abuse do the players need to be receiving? How much abuse is abuse? Is abuse.
Oh, exactly, okay.
So we've got all these kind of initiatives in place to protect individuals, to protect players, to protect teams, to protect staff, but we're not administering them. So until we follow through with that, then you're never going to be doing enough, and I don't want to see, World Cups, European Championships with no football going on. But actually, if the abuse is happening in those tournaments, then there's an obligation to protect people. And this is what we're talking about. We're talking about protecting people from the level of abuse, which I'll tell you now, you've received it, Holly, I've received it, and it plays on you, it's traumatic. So can you imagine professional players on the field of play having this traumatic experience while still trying to perform to 100% of their ability? So this is why we talk about, if we do not diversify the top level of the game, let them appreciate how much it means, let them understand the kind of impact of that kind of abuse, then we're never effectively going to look after everyone in their care. And that's, FIFA have that right to do that. And they've come out and they've spoken and they've acknowledged, but they've not actioned.
Why not, do you think? Why they haven't actioned?
Sorry.
No worries.
I think just to reflect on what both have said here, I think for me personally, I think there's a number of key factors, and for me it's education. I think it's influencers, like we're talking about role models, we're talking about reporting, we're talking about the prosecution actually, and we're talking about regulation. And I think those combined factors working in unison can actually eradicate racism. I genuinely believe that. But they've all got to work in support of one another. So if I go to a game and I witness racism in the crowd, there has to be a clearly defined way of reporting that. And I should feel empowered actually to want to and be willing to report on that. I'd actually also want to see a prosecution that's justified and evidenced and reasonable against what's just occurred. And I don't think the prosecution aspect is amplified enough. I don't think the reporting measures are as clearly defined as they could be, actually. I think in terms of asking the direct question, are FIFA doing enough?
Yes.
I think actually the answer is, well, more can be done. And I think it also is inclusive of UEFA, actually here in England, obviously the FA as well. I think we've all got a responsibility, actually. And I think it comes down to those factors working in unison, like I say. I mean, Holly touched upon it earlier as well with the EDI aspect. So across the pyramid here in English football, the 92 clubs, I think it's 4 or 5 that are reflected in terms of non-white communities. 4 or 5, is that right? I think that's the rough statistic in terms of managers or head coaches.
Wow.
And I think, again, just I want to quickly add in terms of the online abuse that players get. So, we're talking about a global platform here, the global number one sport, FIFA being an international body. But then you look at a global platform as in Twitter, as an example.
Yeah.
And there was an Alan Turing Institute study that was put out, I think, last season. And they found that 70% of Premier League footballers are abused. And 1 in 14 players get abused every day. Which is just unbelievable.
Unbelievable numbers, right? Unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. But and it's what Troy said. I mean, we both work. Well, we've all been players, not to Holly standard. But you're absolutely right. You can imagine. But everyone's on their phones as well. So if I'm one of those 1 in 14, getting abused every day online. But I think not to dwell on the negative in that respect. I think looking at what is coming and what can be done. I think what's really positive is the online safety bill that's currently going through Parliament right now. Mm-hmm. So that's I believe it's a committee level, at the House of Lords. That should and will be passed as an act. And when that occurs, hopefully it will occur, that will mean that these tech companies will be held accountable, legally responsible, held accountable. And you take Twitter as a given example, the punishment that can actually occur if they don't combat it could be up to 10% of their global revenue. And so for Twitter, that's $5 billion. So actually that's $500 million as a fine. So they are going to hopefully take that really seriously.
That's 5 million reasons for them to act.
500 million reasons to act,
yes,
yeah, absolutely.
Properly, yeah.
That's the thing, though. I think when it comes to the punishments, not punishments, but like penalties, more has to be done there because if you look at, we spoke about this just before, but the Brazilian Federation, they've implemented whereby you deduct points if there's racial activity that occurs. And I think, yes, deduct points, implement a transfer embargo. I think more needs to be done in terms of if a player or somebody's receiving racial abuse, it's not just, okay, we'll monitor it and we'll see what happens next time. It's a case of, okay, you've had 3 points deducted. And football being the industry that it is, it's powerful and there's a lot of money involved. People aren't going to want to have points deducted. People aren't going to want to be, restricted by a transfer embargo. So hit them where it hurts. And my point of view here is, at the moment, it's the people in the positions of power who are constantly, they're the ones who are benefiting all the time. It's the people who are trying to affect change. It's the people who are playing the game. It's the people who are also kind of making these people money, who are being abused on the pitch. So let's hit the people in the positions of power who aren't doing it by, like I said, implementing more penalties. That's going to actually shake up the game, because at the moment we could be doing this for another 10, 15 years where we're talking about it, but the same thing's going to happen.
I've been doing it for 10, 15 years. But you know what, just to bolt on to Holly's point there is just, but also the empowerment of the players now. So our players now will not just accept. They will not just, and I know it was a different period of time before, and when the likes of John Barnes were on the field of play, and it's almost like they had nowhere to turn. But our players now will not just accept. So they will be vocal. They will share. So the online abuse, they will share the online abuse. There was a conviction the other day, whatever we think about it, in regards to Ivan Toney of Brentford. And someone that decided, just because Ivan Toney scored 2 goals in a game to win a game for his football team, that they decided that the minute the whistle had blown, that they would racially abuse him on social. Ivan shared it, and there has been an outcome to that. Whether that outcome is satisfactory, I don't believe it is. But there's an outcome. There was an outcome. And I think that's what our players are doing more, to show the industry that we're going to keep feeding you this information. You need to now start acting on this information. So I've been pleased with the growth of the player voice, although I still say it's got a long way to go in regards to those activations where maybe they wouldn't have been picked up before. So players are more than happy now to share their experiences and put them out there. And remember, the experience of being racially abused is not just to a Holly Morgan. Holly's got sisters, family, close friends and everything. That impact is to everybody in Holly's circle. So it is direct to Holly, but actually, the care. I'm a parent of a professional footballer, so I know that when my son has been racially abused before, I know the hurt it brings to me. We don't want pain to come to our children, do we? No,
it's also directed at the community. She represents a certain community, directed at the community, not only the family, the wider family.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. Absolutely.
I think it's just really briefly. I think there's often there's a lot of consideration towards on one spectrum, it's free speech, you know, empowering people to, you know, have that voice of opinion. And of course, what we don't want to do is take the emotion out of the game, you know, people's feelings, because that's actually what makes...
VAR has done that already.
Yes, it has. Apart from VAR, which is clearly, I'm with you all the way. But on a seriously in that regard, though, you know, we certainly don't want to take that away. But clearly, obviously, I think we'll all be agreed on that there is a line there, and if it's crossed in terms of that opinion being abusive or intimidating, there has to be a repercussion. There has to be some form of accountability on that. And if people understand and know that that's going to be the case, at the moment they don't. You can go into any game and be in the crowd, and you can, frankly, be abusive and get away with it.
Yes.
And that's why it still continues. But my comment in terms of that online piece, and exactly what Holly said, you hit people where it hurts. Twitter will take note if they potentially are going to face a $500 million fine. And so reeling that back in, I'm a spectator, I'm a fan of a club. If I know I'm going to be, you know, why not a lifetime ban? Why not a lifetime ban? If you even if it takes 2 counts, 3 counts, but there is a pathway that I can get a lifetime ban. So you start considering your actions. And you go, Troy.
No, I was agreeing with you. I just wanted to almost highlight the fact that when we talk about the ED&I space, and I struggle sometimes with the term ED&I in our sport, but the government are now looking at it.
Yeah.
The government have produced a white paper, so all this conversation, if no one's aware about the independent regulator, so taking football's ownership off of the people that have owned the game for so long, and providing an independence to that, whereas they can look at various different avenues, you know, like the European Super League. That's where it all came from, to be honest. And so there is things happening. Again, they're at a really slow pace, and the white paper that has been produced is obviously being looked at again. We're part of that conversation, because I worried a little bit, because the government said actually football's doing very well in the ED&I space. So all the bodies that working in, you know, creating a better culture, creating more equality, creating inclusion, football's doing a very good job. So we've challenged that alongside a number of organisations to say actually, maybe it's not. And we need to be a part of the change that hopefully creates that space where we don't have this conversation.
I guess we need to know what their definition of good is, don't we?
Yeah. Well, I'd seem to know what their definition of good is, and it's definitely a lower bar than what my definition is. But that shows that there's change. There is change out there. It's just having the right people in that room to affect the change in such a positive way.